The Gospel and the first reading today follow on very, very nicely from last week's Gospel, which, if you remember, we were talking about prayer and the necessity for prayer. We, as Christians, prayer isn't an option. Our faith is a relationship of prayer. And so if we're not praying, what's our faith like? And so prayer is a necessity. That's what we spoke about last week. And this week, the Gospel is about our attitude in prayer and the necessity for our attitude to be one of humility, because the humble man's prayer reaches to heaven, the first reading says. But I'm not going to talk to you about prayer tonight because it's Mission Sunday, and so I'm going to talk to you about mission. And I suspect that they decided Mission Sunday because of the second reading, I should say. Second reading from St. Paul. St. Paul is talking, he's coming to the end of his life, and he's talking about how he has run the race, he has fought the good fight, he has done everything he can to complete the mission that God has given him. And the mission is to evangelize. And this mission is shared by all of us. None of us are exempt from that. It's not a case of, well, that's for the priest and the deacon and maybe this special person over there, but for me, I get to sit in the pews and relax. That's not the case. All of us are called for mission because you and I, we are church. And the church's mission, the very church's existence, is to evangelize. I brought a couple of quotes just to speak on that subject. When Paul was evangelizing, we heard, if you read his text in Acts of the Apostles, how, he talks about fighting the good fight. And for him, often, it was a bit of a battle because as he evangelized, he was beaten many times, he was scourged, he was stoned, he was shipwrecked. He experienced everything in his effort to go out and evangelize, to fulfill the mission that God had given him. He didn't have to do that. He could have stayed at home, and he would have been all right, perhaps. But the Lord had given him a mission, and he's given each one of us a mission. And each of the popes has talked about, Paul VI in Evangelium Nuntiandi, and John Paul II, Benedict, and Francis all speak about the call that we have, the very identity of the church as missionary. And today, Mission Sunday. So Pope Francis, a couple of texts from Pope Francis, and this is one from Evangelii Gaudium, which he wrote a number of years ago. And he says, the Christian community must make a determined missionary decision. Determined decision. It's not like, shall I not? Maybe I will. Okay. No, it's not that. This is a choice I am making, and I am determined to see it through. This is what I'm going to do. The church must make, Christian community, that's you guys and me, must make a determined missionary decision capable of transforming everything, so that the church's customs, ways of doing things, times and schedules, language and structure can be suitably channeled for the evangelization of today's world, rather than her self-preservation, rather than looking after number one, rather than saying, as long as I get what I want, I'm okay. It's not about what's good for me. Self-preservation. And the church often, parishes often, you and I often can think more about self-preservation, as long as I'm all right, Jack, than its missionary imperative, the call to evangelize. So there must be a transformation. Things have to change. They can't stay the way they are. At the World Youth Day in Rio, this is what Pope Francis was saying to the young people. So he's saying it to us as well. He says, I'd like to say something. I need my glasses, sorry. Okay. He says something. He says, I'd like to say something. What do you expect as a consequence of the World Youth Day? What do you expect as a consequence of your faith, of living your faith? What do you expect, he says, asks. Question we need to answer. He says, I expect a mess. There will be one. There will be a mess here in Rio, here in Aberdeen. You know, we like things nice and calm and organized and neat and tidy. I do, certainly. You know, anybody in the parish who works with me, I like things quite nice and organized. These guys have to put up with me saying, you know, come on, guys, this way. I like things organized. But Pope is saying, no, there will be a mess. There should be a mess here in this parish. There will be, he says. I want a mess in the diocese, in the parish, in this city. That's what he wants. I want people to go out. I want the church to go out to the streets. He wants you and I to go out to the streets, he says. I want us to defend ourselves against everything that is worldliness. And so we are being attacked, in a sense, by worldliness. We're being pummeled by worldliness, pressured into living for the world, the here and now, instead of the life of faith, the reality of the eternal life. We have to defend ourselves against everything that is worldliness, everything that is installation. And I think here he's speaking about the status quo, staying the same, keeping everything without moving, that is against everything that is comfortableness. We all know comfortableness. Comfortableness is staying at home or sitting in the pew, not reaching out the hand to our neighbor and saying, peace be with you, or not deciding to pray for them. That's comfortable. Comfortable is staying inside. Comfortable is falling back on ourselves. We spoke about this the other day, whereas we are called to go out, to move out of ourselves. So we're called to defend ourselves against comfortableness, against clericalism. Clericalism, it's the priests who do everything. Let Father Keith do it. Let Deacon Tony, let Father Malachy. They will do it all. I'll sit here because this is comfortable. We've got to defend ourselves against that way of thinking. Everything that is being shut in on ourselves. Parishes here, schools and institutions exist to go out. This parish exists to go out. This parish does not exist for us to come in here and have a nice time. We exist to go out. We do not exist to be here. This should strengthen us and empower us to go out. This is not what it's about. We exist to go out, says the Pope and all the popes before him. He says, if we do not go out, we become an NGO, a non-governmental organization, a charity. And the church cannot be an NGO, cannot be a charity. That's what he spoke about at World Youth Day. And so he spoke about transformation and defense against worldly thinking. When I was first, in 2012, I was at St. Peter's Parish, just along the road, half a mile from here. And I'd been there for 12 years. And then the bishop called me to his office, and I suspected he wanted me to move. And so when I was there, we had a meal and stuff, and then he said, I would like you to go to the cathedral. I thought, oh, I wasn't expecting that, because cathedral, usually, the priests who go to the cathedral are the priests who've been priests for a long time, the senior priests. And I'd only been a priest for 12 years. I wasn't a senior priest, I was still kind of a junior guy. So I said, okay, that's a very onerous task you're asking me to do, but I'll do that. And a day or two later, I had a dream. So I want to tell you the dream, okay? This is the dream. In the dream, I'd won a raffle. And I have no idea what the prize was, but I heard this voice saying, and you get that with it. And I looked across to see what that was. and I could see a bay of a harbor, you know, an area where ships would be moored in a harbor. So I looked across it there, and all the ships in that bay of the harbor were derelict. They were ruins. You know, they were moored up there, and one of them, right in the middle, was a cargo ship, also a derelict, and it was lying on its side, resting, as it were. And so that was the first vision. I was thinking, boy, how am I going to get that up and going? And the voice said, it's okay, you'll do it. It's okay. And then the next part of the vision, I had three images. So the next image was of a ship, big ship, moored up against the quay, pointing out towards the sea. It was ready to go. And the ship was massive. I think it was a battleship, but it had no guns, no weapons. It was just an armored battleship, bit rusty, looked like it needed work. That was the second image. And the third image was that same battleship with no guns out on the high seas, rough seas, big waves. And in the sea, there were people, lots of people in the sea. They were clinging on to stuff. They were helping each other. They were drowning. People were shouting for help. And the ship was going out to pull people from the sea. And the deck of the ship was absolutely packed full of people. And these people were helping those who were in the water to come aboard. And it was packed full of people because every other deck of the ship was packed full of people. That was the dream. The ship was the cathedral. The ship in the harbor, safe, quiet, still waters, nothing happening. On its side, resting. Wasn't going anywhere. The cargo was rotting in the water, gradually being destroyed. No crew, no need, because it wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't doing anything. That's the way it was. The second image, cathedral, but transformed, now a battleship. How much cargo does a battleship have? Might carry weapons, but this didn't have any guns, so no weapons, no cargo. And then the third image, that same ship packed with people, and everyone was crew. No cargo, just crew. It wasn't in a nice, safe harbor, doing nothing, going nowhere, with its cargo rotting. It was out in the high seas, where it was dangerous, where it was messy, where all sorts of stuff could happen, but it was doing what it was supposed to be doing, going out and pulling people on board and saving lives, which is what we should be doing. That's the call. Not to be where it's safe and quiet, but to be going out where it's a bit rough, where it's hard, but where the people are that need us. For that to happen, there must be a transformation, as the Pope says. For that to happen, there must be something. Everything has to be transformed. And it means that you and I have to make a determined missionary decision. You have to decide. You are not called to be cargo. This ship is not called to stay in the harbor and rot. You are all called to be crew. And so the decision, cargo or crew, cargo or crew, which will it be? You have to make a determined missionary decision.